Okay, how's it going, everyone? Happy Friday. Hope you've all been having an awesome week and have an even more awesome weekend to look forward to. Today I'm back to share just a few more fully formed thoughts and just a little bit of spoiler discussion about the movie I just posted a reaction to called 100 Tears from 2007. For those of you who didn't get a chance to watch the reaction yet, I will leave a link up in this corner of the video here for the duration of the viewing. Apparently produced on a shoestring budget of around $75,000. It's a true blue grindhouse midnight movie, drive-in slasher, lo-fi, gritty, splattery, blood wall to wall, also cheap, sloppy, and downright amateurish in places, as many of the original Grindhouse movies were, of course. It centers around Gertie the Clown, who sometime before the start of the movie was falsely accused of an assault that he did not commit, and I guess just languished in seclusion since then, and has now decided to come back and wreak havoc on the world as the Teardrop Killer. Two tabloid reporters who are both keen to break out of all the same old dumb stories about false alien sightings and get into something really dignified, like a killer clown. They try to sniff out Gertie's trail until he turns the tables and kidnaps them and imprisons them in Dad's basement, I mean his warehouse. They have to try to survive the night along with an eccentric girl whose connection with Gertie I'll let you find out on your own. Not that it should really come as any big surprise when I look back on the movie. No beating around the bush here. In terms of the cinematography, this movie looks like it was shot with one of those old camcorders that had the batteries and the tapes that weighed a ton. Given that it was made and released in '07, that's probably the way that it was, and I don't fault them for that necessarily. But it does make it look a bit amateurish and shoddy in some cases. I mean, you wouldn't even get away with this with a proof of concept in this day and age. On the other hand, that amateurish quality also gives it this vaguely snuff feel, which obviously is not going to be to everyone's taste, but if you can make the adjustment, it does give the movie a certain gritty edge. Similarly, while the dialogue is often very trite and dumb and sometimes embarrassing, it does make for some fun, derisive Plan 9 from Outer Space style laugh out loud moments. The score is kind of a mixed bag. There's parts where it's very fitting in a black comedy way, and there's other times where it is just obnoxious and almost a bit lazy. Every kill scene, as wild as they are, and we are going to get to that, is all scored to the same crappy electronic soundtrack. Maybe it was meant to add to the snuff feel like the cinematography, but honestly, it's just grating. Fortunately, the kills are wild and brutal enough that once Gertie swings into action with that giant-sized cleaver, the soundtrack is the last thing on your mind. Gertie's meat cleaver is so cartoonishly giant that the first time you see it, you find yourself wondering if this is actually meant to be taken seriously at all, or if the filmmakers knew what they were doing, if they knew how ridiculous it looked, and that gets answered as soon as you see him start to carve into people with it, and the answer is yes, they definitely knew that it was ridiculous, because the kills are ridiculous, and I say that as a compliment. Although it's honestly a little bit weird to me that this did get an NC-17. I suppose I can sort of see in theory, like if you wrote down a transcription for me of the kind of kills that unfold in this movie, then yeah, if I didn't have anything else to go off of, I would probably be like, this sounds like an NC-17 movie. But when you see it executed in the movie, just like in the Terrifier films, or more so Terrifier 2, it's so cartoonish and so over the top and so obviously fake, as fun as it is, that I don't see how anybody could really take it that seriously. Maybe the fact that everything is seen on screen and it's all brutal and none of it is implied, it's all directly depicted, perhaps that's what tips the balance in favor of the NC-17 rating when it comes to violence like this. But when they're so blatantly prosthetics and the blood is just gooshing out like water, and you see like the same 3 props for intestines fall out every time someone loses their guts, which happens pretty often. If nothing Jason Voorhees did earned him an NC-17 rating, I can't see why Gertie deserved it. I hate to say it, but maybe it was just a publicity stunt that they even bothered to submit it to the ratings board because it got such a limited distribution in theaters. that I don't see why you couldn't have just distributed it in theaters without a rating and just had the theaters enforce an adults only policy. Theaters have done that before if they are willing to take that particular movie on. By and large, honestly, for all the fuss that people make every time there's an NC-17 movie released to a mainstream audience here in North America, those movies generally don't end up being all that harsh or severe in my opinion. I believe that Michael Fassbender movie Shame got an NC-17 rating, if I remember correctly. Please correct me down below in the comments if I'm wrong. But whether it actually did or it didn't, I mean, I'd have to go back and check. But my point is that that is a movie that, yes, earns that NC-17 rating. Terrific movie, but there you go. Gertie, again, is not in that kind of a category here, okay? Not the least because he doesn't get naked like Michael Fassbender did in Shame, and that is probably just as well. Michael and Harvey Keitel was enough for all of us, I think. Finally, I really appreciate how this movie wraps things up. The movie was kind of, as I mentioned in my reaction, getting better and better as it went on. There were some developments in the last act of the movie that genuinely surprised me and made me think about where this could have gone with even just a little more budget and prowess. But in order to talk about those, I'm going to have to get into some spoilers. Just a couple, nothing too major, but one of them is enough of a delight that I wouldn't dream of spoiling it for someone else if you haven't seen 100 Tears before. If you're a slasher fan or a gorehound, this is bona fide midnight movie heaven. Less a homage and more of an actual modern-made midnight movie, and all the amateurish trappings that come with that, so just know that going in. If you know where to look for the charm in that, it may even make the movie better. And with that, here come a couple of quick spoilers. Okay, so having Christine turn out to be Gertie's daughter was not necessarily the hardest thing to guess, but the way that it's actually played out in the movie I thought was very fun and entertaining, and obviously threw in a couple further twists that I wouldn't have expected. I was wondering if I bought the weirdness in her character or not, and she did seem to make the transition into Gertie's little slasher daughter very quickly, if she even had to think about it at all. But as soon as she picks up that sledgehammer and she's sitting there with her pigtails and blood on her clothes and just the general goofy presence that she's been exuding the whole movie, that's when it just hit me like, oh my god, she is the perfect Harley Quinn. I don't buy for a minute that they weren't thinking about Harley Quinn when they did this. Not a knock on the movie in any way, it was just a nice unexpected surprise. I mean, she could have played Harley Quinn and or Sexhead from Rob Zombie's movie 31 just as easily. As a twist, it's kind of a gift that keeps on giving, because as soon as you find out that Christine is Gertie's daughter, it makes you think back to how you saw her in the opening sequence of the movie, and then you start to put together that the opening scene that was staged to make it look like Gertie was shooting himself was actually a murder created to look like a suicide, with one of the journalists stuffed inside Gertie's costume. Again, I'm not patting myself on the back, these are not the hardest dots in the world to connect, but you can at least appreciate that they let that kind of speak for itself. Once you found out that Christine was Gertie's daughter, they didn't feel the need to rub in your face what was going to happen in that opening scene. They just kind of let you put that together in your head, and everything falls into place very nicely and simply, and still makes it more interesting and entertaining. Until you get to the point where Christine suddenly and quite casually shoots Gertie, and that's that. She's still certifiably twisted herself, but then that does reveal to you that she had a bit of her own agenda going on as well. Then you follow her outside and you get a homage, maybe even a bit too deliberate and on the nose of an homage, to one of the closing shots of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Until the car hits Christine and runs her over and splatters her everywhere, which turns it on its head again. And then you find out that this isn't just a car driven by anyone, it's being driven by the surviving female journalist. It's like the movie was deliberately being obvious that way with that homage as a decoy, and then it just slapped me across the face with that car running her over, and then having it be essentially our final girl just kind of out of nowhere on top of it. Like, that is terrific. Like, I have never seen a happy ending that blindsided me that much and was that much fun in a slasher movie of all things. If I did assign star ratings, it would be another star tacked on just for that ending alone almost. I could have done without the post-credit epilogue scene where Gertie shows up out of costume at the journalist's book signing. It's less of a sequel bait and more of an actual epilogue, like an epilogue in a novel. It's just a footnote. It's not trying to upstage the movie in any way, but when you end on such a raucous high note like that, I don't know why you would want to bring in the tambourine after it's been dead for 5 minutes. I don't know why you would add an unnecessary stutter step like that, because damned if it didn't put just a little bit of a smudge on a perfect ending. In the end, if you're a slasher fan and you like your slashers goofy, gory, and completely lo-fi, then 100 Tears should definitely be on your list. And if you watch it and it doesn't feel like your kind of a flick at first, I would suggest toughing it out. Movies like this are a little bit like going for a mud bath for your skin. The whole thing feels gross and weird and putrid at first, but once you're settled in, you learn to love it. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Next up on my list is Badland Hunters on Netflix. Very excited to talk about that one. Keep your eyes for that review in the next couple of days, and I will catch you later.